Good evening. This is Chief Meteorologist Brad Pedovich here at WCNC. Thank you for joining us for live weather impact. Tomorrow night's going to be a super exciting night. We're actually going to release our winter outlook for the Southeast. This is like my 21st annual one we've done. So that's coming up tomorrow at this time. So stay tuned for that. Tonight, we're not talking winter weather. Excuse me. Well, I'm sneezing because it's so dry out there. We're talking warm, dry conditions and fire danger. So let's take a look outside right now from our Dallas camera, looking at 1,450 feet up. Beautiful sunset tonight, which, by the way, was super early, 5:16. By the way, in about 2 weeks, we'll have the earliest sunset of the entire year. For about 3 or 4 days, it'll be at 5:10. It's actually way before the solstice. It's kind of one of those weird things. It's not the shortest day of the year, but the earliest sunset actually happens that first week in December. So get excited for that, for those early sunsets. Not really. It's not something to get too excited about if you don't like these dark evenings. Your weather headlines this evening, you can see we've got a beautiful night in Uptown from our view camera there, looking down towards the Knight Stadium. Fire danger, that is going to be our biggest impact this week. Otherwise, the weather is going to be really delightful. I mean, it is kind of a heat wave for this time of year, which we'll get into in a minute. But the fire danger, I think, is going to be the most impactful thing to worry about, because we have a lot of dry fuels out there. We've got some wind and very dry air, which we'll get into in a minute. It's kind of an interesting set of circumstances that come together this time of year. Now, there's maybe a small chance of rain this weekend. I will show you in a second why I wouldn't get super excited for that just yet. So I've been looking at the Beech Mountain camera in particular. This is the sliding hill looking back towards the town of Beech Mountain and up the mountain, because off the camera left earlier today, we could see this 70-acre wildfire, which is currently burning between Banner Elk and Elk River area. If you know where the Elk River Airport is, there on 194, it's kind of in that area. My understanding, it started from somebody burning a barrel, doing barrel burn, probably burning leaves or debris, and somehow it tipped over or got out of control. And it just kind of shows you how dangerous conditions are, and probably why you don't need to be burning, because there is currently a burn ban for Avery County. And if you're curious if there's a burn ban for your county, you need to check with your local county fire marshal. There's no state ban currently. The state fire marshal can put one out that would extend for areas off your property and outline more than 100 feet, but from your property. But eventually, if it gets bad enough, there will be local fire bans, which will issue by local fire marshals in each county. So far, I know Buncombe County and Avery County at least, but I would not be surprised to see additional burn bans this week, because the fire danger, it's only going to get worse, because the winds, they're going to be gusty, especially mid-afternoon. When you get dry air like this, the winds just pick up with the heating of the day. The humidity has been incredibly low. I mean, in some cases today it was like 10-15%. That is about as dry as it gets. If you have chapped lips or dry skin, or you're noticing a lot of static charge, it's because it's so dry. And this is the main reason we're in the fire danger this time of year, every year. Dry fuels. The fuels are the things on the ground that can burn. This time of year, we have leaf litter. It's basically all the leaves falling off the trees. You know how flammable those are. They're like paper when it dries out. Even if you get rain, a couple days later, those leaves are bone dry. But we also have dormant vegetation. We've already had our first hard freeze. We've had several frosts, so nothing is currently growing except for maybe some of the cool season grasses. So the water cannot be contained in the plant. So even if we get rain, as soon as we get sunny, windy weather, it just dries all these fuels out. So that is something that will not go away unless we get consistent rainfall. And it's not the amounts of rainfall, it's just getting rain every couple of days to keep the fire danger down. Current temperatures, we're falling quickly. Dry air does cool off very quickly. We're back in the 50s. The dew points, look how dry it is. Teens to near 20, so incredibly dry air and very warm today. Not quite as warm as yesterday. Yesterday, people might have missed how warm that Sunday was. It was 79 in Charlotte yesterday. We almost hit 80 here in the middle of November, so it was crazy warm. Tonight, and when you wake up Tuesday morning, we'll be back down into the 30s, so a crisp, cool start to the day. Like we've seen recently, pretty rapid warm-up once that sun comes up. We should easily be back in the 40s. Sunrise tomorrow morning, 7:01 a.m., and by the afternoon, these might be a little low. I would not be shocked if we got to 70 or even low 70s. The southwest wind always overperforms temperature-wise. If you watch me long enough, you know we call that the blowtorch, because the southwest wind is about as warm airflow as you're going to get here in the Carolinas. Now, if you're looking for rain, keep looking, because this system to the north just kind of completely misses us, stays up there, doesn't really provide us anything, but might just pick up the wind. These fronts now are problematic because if they don't produce rain, they are producing wind, which is what we don't want in a fire risk. And so that would be a problem if we continue to see that. If you're looking for rain chances, I think Saturday might be our best chance, but I'll show you here in a minute why even that doesn't look great. We might have to wait till next week with a bigger pattern. Now, I've seen a lot of social media posts, and I'm going to talk with Tim about this coming up in a little bit when he joins us. But there's a lot of talk about the polar vortex and cold air. I'll be completely transparent with it. There is no sign of cold air in our part of the country anytime soon, and I'm talking through next week, like next Thursday, Thanksgiving. So if you're looking for a blast of cold air, there's nothing heading our way in the short term, which is 7 to 10 days. Well, that's kind of long term, 7 to 10 days. It's all warm. So maybe people are looking in December. Even then, it looks like it might take a while. So I think we're at least 2 weeks out from any major pattern change. But I'm always looking for it. I'm looking long range, but right now, they're nothing through Thanksgiving. So the weekend forecast, we talked about the rain chances on Saturday. This is why I'm not super excited. You see the 40%, but look how scattered those are. Most of us will not see rain. So that's why that's not a huge help. We need widespread rain to help out with the fire danger and the drought. We'll take a good long look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast here. Really mild temperatures. The morning lows will be cold tomorrow, but eventually will be in the 50s most of this week. Afternoon highs, mid to upper 70s. Now, the average you see at the bottom, that's the average for today and tomorrow. By the end of this 7-day, the average high starts getting close to the upper 50s. So remember, we're getting closer to December, end of November. The average highs are going down, and our actual temperatures are going the opposite direction. So when you see these mid and upper 70s, you might say, hey, Brad, that's not a heat wave. Yeah, in some cases, that could be 15 to 18 degrees above normal for this time of year. So that's really, really warm. Think about that. That's like in the middle of the summer when the average high is 90, of it being like 110. I mean, so it's crazy warm for this time of the year. We'll show you the 10-day forecast because I do like to show you the long range because it gets us through Thanksgiving Day. There is some rain chances next week. It does look like there'll be some kind of low pressure system that tries to move in our direction. It doesn't bring a bunch of cold air, but it does bring some rainfall possibly, and certainly the potential that we could see some slightly cooler air. But by then, Thanksgiving Day, 61 is not really cold for Thanksgiving Day. That's pretty close to average, if not a little bit above. The average low by then is in the upper 30s, so 48 would be pretty warm. So that's why I say even though it does look slightly cooler, that's still going to be above average for this time of year. And no really signs of cold air like we had for just 2 days last week, which seems like forever ago, but we had 2 days of highs of 48 and 50, and we had snow flurries in Charlotte. That was last Monday. So it's incredible to think that happened all the way last week. So stick around. We're going to talk about fire danger. I think we'll talk about the Thanksgiving forecast, maybe tease ahead to our winter forecast with Tim Buckley coming up here in 2 minutes. Stick around. We'll be right back. Tim Buckley. It's been a while since I think the two of us have been together. It's been feels like a week. It's been a long time, Tim.
We've not been avoiding each other, but we've been getting rest or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like trading PTO time and trading off there. Yeah, but it's that time of the year where you're trying to get it all in right before the end of the year, as we get close to the holiday.
Use it or lose it.
Yeah, exactly. So Tim, today kind of the big story, and we talked a little bit offline about this. Fire danger has been an ongoing threat. We had some pretty good fire danger over the weekend. We actually had red flag warnings for some of the counties up by you, but today. Yeah. Once again, we had the fire danger, and it looks like I think it actually could get worse as the week goes on because the wind picks up and the temperature goes up, which is going to drive a lot of these relative humidities even lower. I think at one point today, our relative humidity was like 14%, Charlie. It was crazy low.
Extremely low. I think today was the worst I've seen it in a little bit. I mean, it was low enough yesterday, but like you said, today, the dew point's just getting crazy low. And so all of this is just to say, you don't have any water in the air, and if you get a fire that gets going, it can really spread super quickly. So pick your poison. Yesterday was much windier. Yeah. Today was a lot less humid, and so I don't know which one is worse. You kind of have to balance those together, but that's something that'll probably continue. My only question about the middle of the week up by my area, at least, is we might have a backdoor cold front kind of close to us, so I'm not so sure how warm we'll be, especially toward the Virginia border, but either way, it doesn't look like any significant rain is headed our way anytime soon.
Yeah, and kind of what we saw yesterday, you get excited for a front because you're like, oh, maybe we'll get some rain, but sometimes, like we saw yesterday, no rain, but the wind, right? You get this big wind that picks up and causes all kinds of issues. So the fronts lately have not really helped us out. They've actually hurt us, Tim.
Yeah, been pretty wimpy, and a lot of people are noticing the wind. Yeah. And we deal with this every year, and we always see it happen. But it does seem to sometimes come as a surprise that, gosh, why is it so windy all of a sudden? Fall. And winter, too, as you've mentioned many times, is a very windy time of year for us, especially coming off the summer where you're begging for a wind most of the time and it hardly ever blows.
Yeah, and the thing about this week is when you hit dry air like this, Tim, just in the heating of the day, you get just convective heating, like you get thermals that rise. So the wind gets really gusty in the middle of the afternoon because the air is so dry. You're getting a lot of what we call the mixed layer gets really deep. And so that leads to just breezy conditions in the afternoon. We saw some of that today. And I did want to talk about, we do have at least one pretty significant fire that broke out. I'm not sure exactly when it started, but it's up in Avery County. It's near Beech Mountain, Banner Elk area. I don't know if this is a good sign or a bad sign, but the North Carolina wildfire dashboard is not loading, so I can't see the last update. But last I checked, Tim, it was 70 acres and 0% contained. And I posted about it earlier today, and somebody up there in that area said they had heard it came from somebody burning in a burn barrel that tipped over and got out of control, which really explains why burning this time of year is so problematic. I know a lot of people try to do it because they're trying to get rid of leaves and yard debris, but if you get a situation like that, you end up getting a fire out of control, and it spreads so quickly because the leaves right now are like paper. They just take off, and then all of a sudden you got branches and everything else burning. So I do think, you don't have any burn bans up your way. I do know Avery County has a burn ban, but I haven't heard about other counties added to these burn bans yet.
I haven't either. And what's interesting is, we're by the book here, the drought status is actually worse here than it technically is up in western North Carolina, part of the mountains. So everyone's a little different, I guess, with their criteria or with their judgment. But I feel comfortable saying it's really a bad idea to burn right now, in my opinion, just from a weather perspective. So, and all it takes is just a little carelessness, or even sometimes it might not really be your fault, or it might be something that you didn't cause to happen per se, but a spark, a stray, anything that just flies out of that barrel or goes, a cigarette butt out of a car like we talk about, or a backfire or something. Those things can cause those fires to spread. So it was kind of interesting watching those cameras up there in the mountains. It looked like at one point it was getting quite a bit worse, and then it looked like the smoke was dispersing a little bit more. So hopefully they're able to kind of get that under control, but we'll wait for further updates, I guess, once the map reloads.
Yeah, and that area definitely, there's a lot of homes in that area. That's a very popular. Eagles Nest is a big housing community
Yes.
there. You've got the Elk River golf course and airport there, which was very instrumental in air support during Helene, and then obviously the town of Beech Mountain. So I know the firefighters are working hard. I actually saw them doing water drops from helicopters, so that kind of showed you the seriousness of the situation. They brought aerial assets in pretty quickly, Tim, to fight that. So it kind
And
of
that
tells you.
Do you think that would kind of signal to me that they were kind of ready? Not that
Yeah.
they were expecting a fire to break out per se, but like, hey, we've got this extra danger. Let's make sure we've got the resources in place should we need them. I
Yeah.
think that's a good sign to have, same day approach to a fire like that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was impressive. You're right. I don't think I've ever seen a fire break out, and then within a couple hours, you already have water drops on it. Probably helps
Right.
it's near the airport up there. That probably helped as well. They probably had something nearby
That's true.
to go fight it. But yeah, that's true. I think they probably had some assets ready to go. And the North Carolina, Forest Service, they do a great job staying on top of this, and they've been putting out some great information. Avery County Sheriff's Department as well. And so people up there that are watching, if you see smoke or you think something suspicious, definitely call it in, because the sooner that firefighters can get a handle on it, the better. And also just stay clear of these areas, because these roads get clogged with emergency equipment pretty quickly. They try to use the roads as fire breaks, and so probably stay off the road. So speaking of the fire danger, Tim, I think this week is going to be problematic. We talked about the backdoor front, but let's talk a little bit about this weekend into next week, because it's obviously Thanksgiving week. It's still pretty far out for a specific forecast. It's just now on my 10-day. But every year it feels like we're worried about travel, weather, and stuff. There are some signs, I think it's conflicting, at least in my opinion, of are we going to see a little bit of a pattern change at some point next week, and when does that happen? But maybe at least a couple chances of rain, which would be great for everybody.
It would be really nice if you could get some rain. And yes, the models, I think, have been trying to figure this out. Some of them looking blowtorch warm, like really, really warm, and then others, flipping onto that cool side. So are they equally weighted? I'm not so sure. The long-range climate outlooks are favoring the warm solution, so
Yeah.
we'll see about that. But I do think, this is the time of year that we tend to see the battles going on, right? So you've got battling out between warm and cooler air, and these are always creating new fronts and new opportunities for rain. And it's interesting how they evolve, because last week, it looked like we were going to have some big-time outbreaks of, maybe severe storms in the middle of the
Yeah.
country this week, and now it's looking a little bit less impressive for that,
Yeah.
which is good, I guess. But next week, it does seem like at least we'll have some chances for some of those rainfall and maybe disruptions. So hopefully, it doesn't impact the travel too much right now. I don't think it's a huge cause for concern yet, but something we'll keep an eye on. What are you thinking for the Charlotte area going into Turkey Day?
I think it's going to be okay. It looks like it's maybe seasonably cool, maybe 61. It might actually be above normal. I'm kind of with you. I think the trend, if you had to ask me, I think it's probably going to be slightly above normal, just because the pattern does. I don't see this big Arctic outbreak that I'm seeing a lot of people kind of get super excited about. And we'll probably get into some of this tomorrow when we talk about our winter forecast and stuff. But it's that kind of silly season, Tim, where people are posting long-range forecasts that they love, and you're starting to talk about the polar vortex and stuff. And what I always find interesting about this is somebody who's looked at this for a long time is, I as somebody who likes winter weather, I admittedly like it. But I always tell people I like to get the forecast right more than I love the winter weather. But these polar outbreaks, or when you get stratospheric warming, we call it sudden stratospheric warming. The thing that's always interesting to me is we know cold air is going to move somewhere in the northern hemisphere, but I always am very, I guess, guarded about. It doesn't mean it's always coming our direction, right? The cold air is coming south, but it could go into Siberia, it could go into the western U.S., it could go into Europe. It doesn't always mean it's coming to the eastern part of the country. So I think you got to always slow your roll sometimes on these, because while I do think cold air will be disrupted sometime after Thanksgiving, I'm not necessarily 100% sure it's heading in our direction, because wherever it goes, it's cold, but the opposite of a trough is a huge ridge, and it can be super warm if you're off by just half a continent.
Yeah, and that can be sometimes when, what we look at a lot of times with these longer outlooks are the ocean temperatures,
Yeah.
and where might you have these ridges setting up, and how do ocean temperatures play a role in that, and all these other teleconnections. So,
Yeah.
the Gulf is still really warm. The Atlantic is kind of average, I guess, right now,
Yeah.
but. These are going to be factors that they aren't decided so much in the month out range, and they're a little bit more on the week to week range. And so there's a bit of luck that kind of plays into that. So it looks like a lot of signals pointing toward cooler weather in December, maybe,
Yeah.
which is only 2 weeks away.
Yeah,
But not right now. I don't think it's anytime soon.
Yeah, I can agree with Tim. I think if it's going to get cool, I would probably favor more after Thanksgiving, maybe in December, not so much for
Right.
Thanksgiving. But speaking of the Thanksgiving travel, you and I have been doing this long enough. It always forever was like Wednesday's a big travel day, but it's kind of changed over the last couple of years because at least locally and with my kids, they're not out of school. Like now they're out of school on Wednesday, sometimes on Tuesday. The travel's starting sooner. It's not happening the day before Thanksgiving. It's really happening the days leading up. And so it's been kind of nice because
Sure.
it's spread out the traffic and the air traffic over 2 or 3 days instead of just being all on that Wednesday. Because back in our day, it was like as soon as work and school was out on Wednesday, everybody got to the airport or the cars and left. That doesn't really happen now. I think people leave on Monday, Tuesday, and early Wednesday, and they don't wait till Wednesday night.
Back in our day, we had to go to school on Wednesday. By God, I mean, that's
Yes.
the way it was. But I remember that. You're exactly right, and not the case anymore.
Yeah.
And maybe for the better. But spreading that out is probably a good thing, especially right now the way air travel's been. The last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's leveling itself out a little bit, and you can keep the weather from avoiding that. But as someone who typically flies to see my family, I've definitely been watching that a little bit with concern. But I think it's hopefully getting better. And if you ever have the pleasure to fly on Thanksgiving Day itself, it's a treat.
Yep.
As someone that works in the news business, I often work on the Wednesday before, and quite often I'm at the airport at 7 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day. Not a bad place to be, and it's usually even some empty seats next to you on the flight.
Yeah, I was actually. So I've traveled a couple of years ago. We traveled on Christmas Day, and it was very pleasant. You're right. Everyone's very happy too. It's just a jovial kind of atmosphere. So, and I will tell you this: my dad just flew back to Ohio this morning. I took him to the airport, and I was sweating it, Tim. I thought I got to get my dad there early. He's got to check a bag and go through TSA. It was a breeze. It was like super smooth. So it sounds like, at least from the TSA standpoint, it's gotten a lot better and the lines were moving. And it sounds like, at least air traffic control wise, it's starting to get back to normal, which is just in time for next week. So you're right. I think sometimes we blame weather for a lot of things, but the airport, sometimes it's everything but the weather that's causing issues.
Yeah, especially right now. Weather's been just so quiet. I've kind of been focused on other things, but I know you like when this happens. I'm curious what happened with Charlotte, but up here in Greensboro today, and if we want to take my graphic, I've got this pulled up. Our almanac report pulled right there within 1 degree on both sides.
I love that.
And no one else in the world may find this interesting except for Brad and I. But averages you'd think happen all the time. Most of the time, we don't hit our averages. So to be within 1 degree on both the low and the high is pretty unusual, and I just get tickled when that happens. So kind of nice. It's also helpful to know what is our average this time of year. Low 60s, upper 30s. They change a lot. In the month of November, they change a lot day by day.
Yeah, and that's why today, I was calling what's going to happen this week a heat wave, and people are like, well, it can't be a heat wave. I'm like, well, for us, it's like 10 to 15 degrees above normal. It's kind of a heat wave, and especially next week when the average high for us and you will be in the 50s. If you're in the 60s, that still feels crisp and cool, but that's warm for this time of year. Always got to use the climate averages, which I love, Tim. That is something I'm always excited for. I think we had one time this summer, it might have been summer, early fall, where we had 2 days in a row where we almost had the exact same high and low temperature as the average. And we missed it by 1 degree, and I was kind of bummed because it was such a unique thing to happen. Yeah, the averages are always fun because that's why I like that you put average and not normal, because if you think about it as a batting average, if you hit 300, it's not like you go 1 for 3 every day. Some days you go 0 for 4, and some days you go 2 for 4, and 1 for 3, and it averages out to 300. And the temperatures are the same way. Sometimes your average high, and I've actually looked this up there's a couple dates during the year where we have never actually hit the average high, because it's the average of all the highs that have happened. So it's kind of a quirky thing in our stats where you could have the average high be a certain temperature, and it had never been that temperature for that date.
Very unusual. I had a professor back at Penn State, Dr. John Neeson. It was one of his big pet peeves was the weather is never normal.
Yes.
There's not such a thing as like a normal weather day. You can have averages, you can have means, and those type of statistical things, but normal was not a thing that he wanted to say. And I think that makes sense to me too. That's kind of funny. Another little climate thing I was looking up for lately is we just come off another weekend with highs in the 70s.
Yes.
So I was wondering, gosh, it seems so warm to me to have days in the 70s in November. How often is this supposed to happen? So if you go back for our area, at least my area, how often do we get a 70-degree day in November? Well, we average 6 of them every year. So that's actually quite a few. And so far this year, even including this weekend, we've only had 5. So it's actually not that unusual, or certainly not as much as I thought it was. And always good to be checked by the statistics.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. That's a good stat. I just pulled that up. So for Charlotte, and obviously we have 14 days left in the month, we've hit 70 or higher 9 times already. Last year for the whole month of November, we did it 11 times. So, it looks like the average is somewhere around 7 or 8. But the all-time record is 20. Wow, that's a lot.
Wow.
But
our record was 18. It happened back in 68 and 71.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what date ours is. Ours was 1931. Man.
Oh, sorry, 31. Yeah, I had my memory wrong.
Yeah,
31,
that's ours too. 20 days. That's a pretty warm November. Yeah, and it's funny. I joked today. It was a week ago. We had snow flurries, and the only 2 cold days really in the month of November are going to be those 2 cold days of Monday, Tuesday, and they were separated by 77 the day before, and then yesterday in Charlotte, we got to 79 down here. We almost hit 80 yesterday. And it's just wild to think in the 7-day period, we had 77 and 79, but we also had 2 days in the 40s and snowfall. So it's just, that was a wild week last week for that. But that's a great stat. I think the 70-degree weather, I could see that happening because of the dry air, One of the nice things about dry air, we hate it for the fire danger, but you get these big swings in temperature, like, 30s in the morning, 70s in the afternoon. That's not unheard of this time of year.
It's not. It'll continue to happen probably. We'll get that deep freeze eventually, I'm sure, but it's not coming up too soon. Anything you want to tease the folks with before we get toward tomorrow's episode?
I will say the biggest thing I've looked at, and I'm sure you, Tim, you looked at it quite a bit, is we have a double La Nina. It's a kind of a weak La Nina, but 2 years in a row that moving in. And I found some interesting stats about back-to-back La Ninas. I think typically when we think of La Nina here in the Southeast, we think mild and dry. But when they're back-to-back, the weather acts a little bit different. And so just a little hint, I would say I definitely think mild, but I do not want to disappoint the snow lovers because I do think we're going to have some chances, and I think we'll get more into this tomorrow, that we'll have some chances for wintry weather. Just don't look for a cold, wet winter, but don't be disappointed because there's probably still going to be chances of snow at some point.
It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and we'll see you tomorrow, and stay tuned because Tim and I will be talking about the winter forecast. I'll do mine at the beginning of the show, and we'll talk about his ideas and some of the thoughts I have, and we'll look at some of the things we look at and why it's fun to do. Sometimes it's not really useful, Tim, but it is fun. There are some tells, if you will, that give us, and like I always tell people, a seasonal forecast, if you're 60% right, that's pretty good. So you just want to be better for the coin flip, and that's what we try to do. So stay tuned for that. Our winter forecast will be coming up tomorrow in the same time. Stick around. We'll have more news coming up after the break.